Pay him. Consider it a stupidity fee. Remember what happened today. What is the single worst financial decision you have ever made? I had a chance to get in on the Google stocks when they first went public, but I skipped it. Somebody replied, to be fair, this is an example of hindsight bias. There was no way of knowing that Google would take off in the way that it did ahead of time, so you shouldn't kick yourself for failing to invest in it. Investment-wise, refusing a gift of 5,000 bitcoins in 2010 from a friend in exchange for covering the monthly TeamSpeak fee. Generally, not leasing my first luxury car. Losing 15% of the sticker value just driving it off the lot was not fun. Buying a $200 promise ring during high school only for her to lose it and break up with me anyway. Somebody replied, console yourself that at least you didn't give her the real deal and sign away half your net worth to her. Some lessons are worth the cost. Marrying my first wife was an extremely poor life choice. Get a prenup, everybody. It makes life easier because you won't have to divorce the person you marry. Somebody replied, I just cannot understand why anyone would marry without a prenuptial agreement. Like, at worst, it's a meaningless paper because you two love each other until death. At best, it could quite literally save your life while in the throes of despair that is divorce or alimony. There literally isn't a single downside to it. The worst financial idea would be buying a super expensive Millennium Falcon drone while I was blackout drunk. The best overall idea would be buying a super expensive Millennium Falcon drone while I was blackout drunk. Two come to mind, and I'm not sure which was worse overall. First, I was so happy to get my first job offer straight out of college that I accepted the pay they offered without even attempting a counter. The exact effect of this is obviously incalculable, but I worked there for several years. Second, my parents used a financial advisor for decades, and I began investing with him as soon as I had some money. My parents were amazing at being frugal and sensible with their money, so it seemed like they did well over the years. Now I realize the success was all their saving and the advisor was worthless like all of them. He was just selling fear and collecting commissions. Luckily, I got suspicious of this strategy and started investing elsewhere over 10 years ago, but I did pull all my money out until fairly recently. My guess is I lost out on a six-figure amount by not just moving to an index fund 10 plus years ago. I loaned friends money and lost about $20,000 between a couple people. They view me as the butthole for still wanting to get paid. Those aren't friends, they're some people who took advantage of my kindness and are out of my life now. Somebody replied, the best advice I ever received was to never loan money that I wasn't prepared to lose. I'll give people money if they're friends or family and it's in the budget, and if they pay me back fine. But if I can't afford to lose that money, I can't lend or give it. When my great-grandmother died, the family offered her house to me for a quick sale at $65,000. I said no. My sister bought it and it's now worth over $1 million. Continuing to spend money on dating apps. Somebody replied, I spent $3,000 on Smite and $4,500 on Genshin Impact. I would rather have spent it on dating apps, I might have more to show for it. I got married and then got divorced. Despite what the courts ordered, I still lost around £100,000 by supporting my ex-wife so we could sell our old home. She refused to do this, and both the courts and I got frustrated with her unwillingness to cooperate. I gave up my claim because it was making me sick. I had a severe manic episode in Miami while at a bachelor party. I ended up getting taken advantage of by people I didn't know in the group and spent $8,000 at a day club. I don't even remember what happened to say it was worth it. Following Wall Street bets. Somebody replied, I lost $3,000 in total on the stock market. The dumbest part is I was up $3,000 at one point, and decided not to sell because I thought it would go higher. Over the next week, the stock price dropped from its high and eventually I was down $3,000. I was trying to do a friend outing with friends that flaked constantly. I got a deal on a resort nearby where it was $250 for a 2-night stay, and asked for the 2 busiest days off work to do it. Within 48 hours of check-in, everyone abandoned it and I got stuck with the bill and the lost wages. I co-signed a loan. Never loan money to friends unless you can afford to lose it. Buying an engagement ring and proposing to someone who was emotionally abusing me. Somebody replied, "That wasn't a mistake. It was abuse." I recently got into off-roading, so that's pretty much my entire paycheck taken up with my hobby. Gas, tires, recovery equipment, suspension mods, body armor and lights have been done so far. More armor, more suspension mods, trimming and bigger tires will be done in the future. In the farther future, a more capable platform and all of the above will be done, only more. It's a money pit, but it's so damn fulfilling I don't see myself ever stopping. Going to a public university instead of going to a community college. Literally could have saved $40,000. Somebody replied, "In hindsight, I'm so happy that I decided to go to community college. When I started college in 2000, the school I went to was only about $2,000 per semester, and as such, my parents were able and willing to cover it. Had I gone to a state university, that most likely would not have been the case. As such, I graduated with zero debt, so the degree that I never made use of was a much smaller waste of money than it could have potentially been." Getting a girlfriend without a full-time job and an $8,000 credit card at 22. She didn't pay for more than 10 things ever in the 1.5 years we were together, including Taco Bell or 7 to 11 trips. I financed a new car when I was about a payment or two from paying off the current car I had. I took the current car to the dealer for an oil change and tire rotation. I could have had a good 10 years worth of savings by now, but instead they all went to car payments. That second car gave me so many troubles I had to trade it in with a lot of payments still left, so the third car had 2 cars worth of rollover payments. What an awful show it was. My current car is now finally paid off and I plan to drive that thing for at least another decade. It's a good feeling being free of car payments. Not cashing out when up 900k in crypto starting off with 3k. Somebody replied, "A guy offered to buy my old phone for 10 Bitcoin in October 2014. I googled it and it was pretty close to my asking price of $1,000, over by like $50 or so. I didn't know much about it so I did some quick research, saw that it fluctuated far too much for my liking and told him no. It would have been worth $12,000 2 months later, and way more down the road. I let my so-called friend convince me to buy a huge PA system because we were thinking of starting a band and for some reason, that was apparently the first thing we needed. I've never even plugged it in. I also went to Berlin with the boys in October 2019. I spent 4 days there and barely remember any of it. I haven't been abroad since. The first house was bought in 2006 for $166K and sold in 2012 for $130K. It's gotta be kids, right? If we're only talking from a financial standpoint, this is the only answer. That said, I love mine and wouldn't change a thing, most of the time. Opening a joint bank account. Would not recommend it as spending habits vary from person to person. Instead, keep your own bank accounts and open a joint bank account to cover shared expenses like rent, with each individual having a percentage of money auto-transferred. My wife and I had been waiting ages for house prices to drop, I mean literally waiting for years. In the end we decided to bite the bullet and buy a house. This was in February 2008 at the peak of the housing bubble. A few months later everything crashed. We also thought that it was going to be an unpredictable time with interest rates, so we locked into a fixed-rate mortgage at about 6% for 7 years. Along with the crash, interest rates plummeted. Somebody replied, "Here's the catch with this one, even though at that moment, he truly lost money, probably several thousands, now he has a house that today is probably valued at more than he has ever paid for it. And millions right now would prefer to have made the same mistake that he did, even if that could have cost them more money back then." I too decided to pull the trigger on purchasing a house last year. Painful? Yes. Worth it? Definitely. With the container issues, plus today's inflation, my house would cost twice as much to build. And building it is another problem, because there are no materials anywhere. My neighbors have 3 months of delay on their construction, because they cannot get materials, cement, steel rods, concrete blocks, tiles, you name it, to build it. In my country, Argentina, the dollar is really valuable. Anyway, I had around 50k pesos and the dollar was easy to buy, so I had to buy some dollars. Well, I didn't do it and then dollars value rose up. That happens often here, and if I had ever bought those dollars now I would have 100k pesos. I hate my choices. I co-signed a car loan for my brother. He did not make any payments. I had to repo the truck and eventually trade it in. I lost thousands of dollars. You know those fake Microsoft scammers? I fell for it. I lost all of my savings that day. The damage has long since been repaired, but it will always be the most embarrassing moment of my life.
Honestly, I went to university.
My degree is in the field that I work in, but I don't think I've ever actually applied a single thing I learned. I'd have been far better off just learning vocational certifications, etc. If we're measuring strictly by dollars and cents, I've sunk ridiculous amounts of money into any hobby or interest I've ever indulged in, including cars, motorcycles, woodworking, archery, firearms, fishing, etc. I know I'll never see any of that money back, except for the woodworking. People are always paying me to build things. Anyway, I don't spend beyond my means and I look at the money I've put into these things as an investment in my mental health. Listening to people's uneducated opinions about investing, or lack of investing. When my wife and I first got married, we thought we were on top of things by partnering equally in all things in the relationship. The problem is that I understood investing and she did not, so there were a few investments I wanted to make that I spoke to her about, as we had agreed. But because of her lack of comfort, I didn't make the move. I definitely missed out on several $100,000 as a result. We've changed things a bit since then, and now I handle all aspects of our finances, with the quarterly reviews so she knows what's going on outside of the shared checking and savings accounts. But this is more informational than anything else. If something happens to me, she needs to know what's what at least at a high level, which works a lot better for us. For what it's worth, if you're in a position to do so, I think multiple accounts make things easier to budget and keep everyone comfortable. We do shared checking and savings, shared goals, vacations, cars, etc. Her personal account, my personal account, investing account. Each time money comes in, it's automatically allocated to those accounts in percentages that work for our current lives. Stock picking, it's like going to a casino. I felt emboldened by early wins and thought I had a knack for something known to be incredibly difficult and chance-driven. If I had put everything into index funds, I would be about 20% closer to financial independence. I got a $10,000 line of credit from the bank and a $3,000 credit card at age 18 for university, only to decide I didn't want to go to school. I booked a one-way trip to Australia with less than $200 in my savings and lived in Melbourne for a year. I got myself into $10,000 debt and it took me 7 years to pay off. In a way, I'm happy I did it because it taught me how not to manage my money and I've never been in any debt ever since. We should have invested the $80,000 we spent on our wedding. Sure, my wedding was gorgeous and dreamlike. We were 24. But now that we're approaching 40, it seems silly to have wasted that kind of money on just a few hours. Back in 2019, I used the money I saved from my part-time job to buy an e-bike. This meant my mother, sister and me had to use the car less and spend less on gas. The problem is, it was the first model of said e-bike line of products. Guys, never buy the first model of a product. The bike was fine-ish in technical sense, but if you dared to breath on its general direction, some problem happened. You fixed the rear wheel? Guess what? A different part of the forward wheel is now damaged. And so on. At least the chair didn't broke down, thank God. When I was in my early 20s, I was backing out of a parking garage space and accidentally turned the car right into a cement pillar, right on the driver's side. It put a dent right at the base of the door that almost made it impossible to open. About a month after this, I get a knock on my apartment door from this grungy-looking repairman that here happened to drive by my place and see my car. He says he'll fix the dent on my car, right then and there, for $100. I'm thinking, what the hell? Even if it's a shitty job, at least I'll be able to open the door. So, I agreed. So the guy ends up fixing the dent by puncturing what was basically a garden claw attached to the end of a rope, into my car, and pulling the dent out. While he's going through this process, he's telling me a story about how this guy cheated his family out of an astronomical amount of money and he's considering murdering him. This is where I sensed the setup. I knew he was establishing a narrative, real or fake, that he wasn't afraid to kill someone. Then, when he was all done, the moment I was waiting for. Me, getting cash out alright, $100. Him, no. Me, no, what? Him, I said $300. Me, you said $100. Him, I would never do it for that little. Me, I'll be back. I need to go to an ATM. So, I drive away. I'm considering calling the police. But I'm also thinking this guy already knows where I live. I end up calling my dad to ask him what to do. Here was his advice. Dad, long side go to the ATM. Get $300. Pay him. Consider it a stupidity fee. Remember what happened today. 20 years later and I've never forgotten and have never been scammed again. It still physically makes me cringe recalling this story. I continued using heroin for 15 years even though I knew there was a solution. That cost me millions of dollars over that time. Today I'm 4.5 years clean with a thriving business and more financial freedom than I know what to do with. When I got married, my wife owned her house and had it worked on so it looked good and she insisted that she was good with money so I trusted my income to her. As it turned out, the house was basically surface work to hide very expensive underlying issues and she's absolutely terrible with money. I've put tens of thousands of dollars into this money pit, just to make it safe. I started doing updates to make it nicer when COVID hit and building materials skyrocketed, so I guess that'll wait. And I don't even know how much money she thrown away. When she was managing the money we were both full-time and I had my business bringing in $6,000 to $12,000 a month. She just kept saying that it wasn't enough. When I challenged her about where the money was going and asked for a list of the bills she got offended because I didn't trust her and if I didn't like how she was taking care of things then I could pay the bills myself. Eventually, the bills landed in my lap anyway and I found out that she had no organization and everything was 3 months behind, including the mortgage. We had no savings, no retirement, and no college savings for our daughter. I scrambled and contacted all of the vendors to make a plan except two. One was our trash and sewer utility because that bill came every other month and it was $800. I called them to find out who they were and realized that they were the billing arm of my employer. I said that I'd call them back with a plan. And then I caught pneumonia. By the time I recovered from that the bill was over $1,200 and they casually mentioned that they can just put a lien on the house. I restacked my payback plan and worked it hard and was one paycheck away from being caught up with everyone. But there were two vendors that I didn't contact, remember? That second one was a credit card that I didn't know about. It went to collections. And the week before we were 100% caught up on all of our bills they took all of our money from both of our accounts and intercepted our mortgage payment after it had been sent. I didn't even know that was possible. All of our bills fell behind and I had to borrow money for gas and food. I was embarrassed and furious. I sued the credit card company for the illegal collection and came up with a new payback plan. I worked overtime when I could. The credit company screwed us around so much the judge yelled at them. My wife and I were both hourly so missed work for court was missed pay. We won the suit but only for the money they took, not the overdraft and late fees that happened as a result. So the biggest financial mistake that I made was not taking personal responsibility and trying to trust other people to take care of things. The second biggest was not having a retirement account as early as I could. With the money my business made, if 10% went into a 401k, I'd be looking to retire in my 50s instead of mid-60s. Third biggest was accepting all of that nonsense from my wife. We're both more secure and happier with me taking care of the bills. If she ever has any questions, I show her the budget and my actual spending that I track in a spreadsheet. Every so often, I make her look at the budget so that she understands our position, both good and bad. Go learn about personal finances. I read a couple of books per year to stay up to date and learn new tricks to make things more efficient. It's not hard. 10% of your income into a retirement account, even if you skip meals, or fun to do it. If you have questions, ask. I learned every lesson the hard way. I hope you enjoyed listening to these stories. Did you learn anything from them? If you did, be sure to subscribe for financial freedom, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video.